When the call comes in, leadership is everything.
We analyze the data in real time,
Making the tough decisions under pressure. Welcome to Stat Leadership.
I am Phil Moy.
I am JR Pickett.
Hi, I'm Chetan Kharod.
And this is episode 2 of our podcast titled Leadership and Self-Awareness, Foundations of Leadership. All right. So should we just get right to it, or do we want to start with how everybody's doing?
Let's get right to it. I don't care how nobody cares how we're doing.
JR is just sad because in one moment he's doing musicals and the next moment he's doing judo with his injured thumb, you know?
That's fair. Nobody cares. Nobody cares.
There were a surprising number of people responded to your Facebook post about being a musical dad. And I was like, oh, everybody recognizes Joseph in the Technicolor Dreamcoat and all that stuff. I was impressed with everybody's knowledge.
There's this underground theater community, I think, out there. I think that the more folks that I talk to, and I have a Bachelor of Fine Arts in drama from a conservatory program.
I did not know that.
And,
what? I know.
I write, seriously, Carnegie Mellon, class of 96. And
Wow.
So theater design production, I was not on the performance side. If you ever see me perform, then you would understand why. But I find so many folks that when they find that out, they're like, oh yeah, I did theater and did this stuff. And so there is this sort of undercurrent of former theater kids. And I actually find it really helpful for what I do now, as far as not only being a doctor, but organizational leadership and collaborating with folks.
So I'll ask the question that everybody's probably going to ask. So what are your thoughts as a theater expert of the movie Wicked?
I haven't seen it yet. So I'm sorry. We'll watch it. My girls want to. We're going to go out and see it for sure. But I've heard only fantastic things, not only about the movie, but of course about the play or the stage musical, as well as the books. I'm looking forward to it.
I expect an Instagram pic or a Facebook pic of your face painted green when you see the movie.
Well, don't go on. It's a flying monkey. All right,
that's it. That's actually a pretty cool costume. I'll accept that.
That's reasonable.
All right. Well, let's get down to it. Leadership and self-awareness. Chet, do you want to kind of bring us in and tell us what the thoughts are on this one?
Yeah. When we talk about leadership, as we've mentioned before, a lot of times we or novices will get distracted by what position or title they've been given. But those of us that have had those positions, or not the position, but the opportunity, most of us know that it really doesn't start with the title. It really starts with knowing ourselves, being self-aware, understanding what our strengths and weaknesses are, understanding that how we do in terms of organization or relating to people and whatever that is, so that when we're building a team, we are able to, as they say in the Good to Great book by Jim Collins, he says, it doesn't so much matter where the bus is going at the beginning. You just got to get the right people on the bus first. So knowing who I am helps me build the cast so that the leadership team or the execution team is able to meet the need, right? So all of that begins. And even if we're not in an official position, I always tell my kids, I think my fellows have heard it before, I'm like, no matter who, you're at least leading your own life. So all of us lead something, lead well. Let's learn how to do that. And a big part of that is being self-aware. So I thought it would be a great topic for today.
Yeah, I completely agree. Recently, I've had, fortunately or unfortunately, because heavy lies the crown and all, I've had some leadership positions fall in my lap and had to take up responsibility. And as one of the younger leaders of this podcast here, it's a little bit intimidating. You have the kind of imposter syndrome of like, oh my God, I'm going to be leading an entire emergency department, as the medical director of emergency department. What the heck? What do I do? I don't really know the first thing about this, but the more I delve into the leadership or being a leader, it's really all about who you are and your character. Number one, people will trust you and will trust where you want to go as long as you have the right character and self-awareness of where you are in the world and to your team. Yeah. So
I think to that end, people will see through you. That if you have any direct contact with the people that you're leading, if you're not your authentic self, then people will see through that eventually. And that's not to say that they won't follow you necessarily, but I think that being self-aware, being who you are, that it makes, as a leader, it makes you predictable, which is not a bad thing at all, because people like stability, they like safety, they like predictability, and the folks that they're leading them. But I think that if you at all are putting on a face that is not you, that either who you are or who you want to be, that's the other thing. You don't just act like who you are, act like who you want to be. And I think if they see that what your interactions or your things that you say outside of certain settings don't match up with that, then you lose some credibility. And I had somebody say to me once, I don't need credibility, I'm in charge. And I said, you do need credibility. I was like, what?
Yeah.
You lost me there as you're
screaming. But really, that's true, because as we talked about before, there's no such thing as authority. It's all influence. And if you are seen as disingenuous, then people will have a much harder time being led by you and falling into and supporting what it is that you wish to accomplish as the leader.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think long-term success, right? That person who said, I don't need competence, I'm in charge, or that it works in the short term, maybe once, right? And then your team starts drifting. So we used to jokingly say, when I was a squadron commander, I didn't say this out loud to anyone because did not want to get laughed out of the room. But my goal was to be the kind of leader where people, like, back behind me, there's the squadron command flag from when I was a commander. And in my mind, it was very much a Lord of the Rings kind of thing where you plant your flag on the hill and people rally to your banner because that's where the fight is going to be. That's a little bit dramatic, but my thought was, what makes people attracted to us? And it's these things that you guys are talking about. And that I read it somewhere that really it comes down to charisma equals competence plus warmth, right? So if you're super competent, but a complete a-hole or very hard to deal with, or you're aloof and you can't relate, right? Now your competence is not nearly as impactful because people avoid you. Or if you're super cool and everybody likes to hang out with you, but you don't have a clue, that's also dangerous and people will avoid that. So striking that balance of competence and warmth gives us charisma. Charisma is the thing that draws people into our circle of influence. And then from there, a lot can be achieved. And Phil, the idea of imposter syndrome, man, I got to tell you, 100% of high achieving people have a real sense of imposter syndrome that continues and persists no matter how much you do. So when I entered Squadron Command, I felt it. As I left and went to my next job, which was a higher responsibility, higher visibility job, I still had it. And I think if you leverage that, all it is your voice say, hey, make sure you're up to this task. It's like the athlete who gets a little queasy and then goes out and has a 5-for-5, 6 RBI game and they just crush it. And even low-level athletes like me, I had this high school baseball game, I'll never forget it, doubleheader, end of the season thing. I don't know why I was so nervous, threw up before the game, which I never used to do. But man, I got 9 at-bats between the 2 doubleheader games. I had 8 hits, double-digit RBIs. I don't know what happened that day, but that queasiness or I don't belong here feeling was immediately followed by whatever that performance was. And I wish I could say, oh, my games are like that. But that was I think it's a normal response that we have and we'll try to rise to the occasion.
Yeah. And it is purely, it feels anxiety provoking, but in my experience and from what I've experienced and everything, I'm reminded of this wonderful anecdote by Michael Caine, where he's talking about, he's a young actor, Michael Caine, the British actor who played Alfred in the Batman movies with Christian Bale, for those of our listeners who don't know.
There's like any number of Movies. See, you could have brought up right then, but it's, you brought up Batman.
We got to do Batman, right? Because that's probably one of the more recent Michael Caine movies. But anyways, he's telling the story of when he's a young actor and he's on the theater and he tries to walk on stage, but they accidentally knocked over the chair and he can't get through the door. And he tells the director, he's like, hey, I can't get through to the scene. And the director's like, use it. He's like, what do you mean? He's like, listen, if this is a comedy, you trip over that chair and you fall down. If this is a drama, you kick the chair across the room, right? So I'm trying to approach this imposter syndrome with kind of that kind of mentality where I'm going to use this feeling of not quite inferiority, but anxiety to really help me learn about myself, about what it means to be a leader amongst your colleagues, and use it to just be humble and just kind of, just learn the process. Another thing as well, totally understand, Chet, before a game, before a race for me, for triathlons, you get that nervous knot in your stomach, you sweat, your heart's racing. Some people interpret that as anxiety. And if you look at the pro athletes, you ask them, hey, how are you feeling before your game? They'll answer, I'm excited. Right? Because those very same feelings, knot in your stomach, fast heart rate, little sweaty, kind of, energy kind of pumping up. That's the kind of same feeling, of the same symptoms of both anxiety and excitement. So yeah, I'm trying to kind of just reframe my mind and say, hey, I'm sure I'm a little anxious. I acknowledge that, but I'm also acknowledging that this is exciting. I'm trying to learn. I'm trying to grow from this one. And, we all know that growth is not fun. It can be painful, but it's just part of the process here. And so, yeah, I thank you for that, Chet. But yeah, I'm trying to just be very cognizant of those portions of how I'm feeling to when I'm in these leadership positions. And JR, to your point where the disconjugate actions or view of like actions versus who you are, that's so true, because I agree. it's very blatant, but I agree. People will see through you. And there's this book by Malcolm Gladwell called Talking to Strangers, where he uses the example of how Neville Chamberlain, the prime minister of the UK in the 1930s, kept on giving Hitler a second chance. He's saying, no, this guy, he's not going to invade any further than Poland. He ain't going any further. I trust this guy. He's going to do good. He's going to not go any further. And as we all know, Hitler kept on going. And then there's Winston Churchill, who, blunt as he is like, no, this guy's a jerk. Shouldn't trust any word that he says there and everything. And Malcolm Gladwell says, the major difference was Neville Chamberlain based his judgment on Hitler's character based on what Hitler said, whereas Winston Churchill based his judgment of Hitler's character on what he did. And so it's a very interesting point. And that's just a kind of some anecdotes that kind of bring that home there.
I saw a video of Mike Tyson, of all people, and this was when he was in his competition days and really in his prime, and he's on the roof of the venue wherever he's right about to go into a fight, and he's sobbing, and his coach is talking with him. It's the cameraman is behind them, and he's just over by the edge, and he's sobbing. I don't want to be here, and this coach is talking him through these feelings, and like, all right, champ, time to go. And Mike turns around and heads inside and crushes whoever it was he was fighting at that point. And here he's one of the best boxers to have ever lived. And if you had the opportunity to grow up watching him fighting in his prime, and just how incredibly dangerous a human being he is, and seeing that, okay, if this guy who has been knocking dudes out like seconds into the first round, it can have those feelings, of course we all do. And that's natural. So with that authenticity, I want to ask you guys, do you talk about that uncertainty to the people that you lead? Nobody wants a nervous Nelly, but do you say anything about that to the folks that are depending on you?
Hey, it's a great point. And I think the messaging is key, right? So to deny that or to pretend it's not happening is the exact opposite of where you want to be. It's completely inauthentic and people can see through that. On the other hand, if you're dithering and stammering and wringing your hands over it, now you're going to lose confidence for the entire organization. because you're supposed to be the figurehead or the symbol of it, right? So some of it is kind of delivery. And like you were talking about before, JR, communication, our ability to master that moment. And one of my mentors used to always say, to be the kind of person you want to be, you have to do the things that kind of person would do. And whenever I was faced with one of those moments, I would imagine that what would a in control leader in this situation look like? And what would they act like? And maybe it was a stage presence, right? There's a great Disney kind of organizational management book where they talk about don't let your backstage get on stage, right? When I talk to my people, if it was, say we were doing something really unusual that was going to make us short-staffed, and to the people working the squadron, what they were worried about was, am I going to have to work overtime? The Air Force doesn't pay overtime. Who's going to do childcare? Understandable and natural human concerns. And what I wanted out of them was 100% effort. So I would start out saying, this is our mission. This is what we're going to do. A number of us are going to talk to you about how we're going to do it. Let me tell you that I have some concerns myself about how we're going to do this, right? And this is how we're going to address those. Pretending it didn't exist would have been the wrong thing to do. Going down the rabbit hole of all the problems up front probably would have been the wrong thing to do. Acknowledging that there were some barriers or obstacles there, saying it out loud, got it over with. And here's a better example, a little less stressful one. I was awarding a medal to one of my officers one time in front of about 200 people in my squadron, a bunch of enlisted people. And this officer completely muffed the customs and courtesies. He didn't know how to shake, take, and salute. He didn't know how to do facing movements. He looked like a complete Muldoon. And my first response was, in my mind, I'm like, oh, God, that's embarrassing. He's an officer, for crying out loud. Thankfully, none of that came out, because all I said was, okay, stop. Everybody time out. Hold where you are. Since I was the ranking person, I could just pause the whole thing. And I go, listen, I just realized that I've never gone through this with you guys. And what I want for you is to be comfortable doing our customs and courtesies. We are the U.S. Air Force. We're the Air Force Special Operations Command. Let me show you how this is going to be, how we do this. And then we can all do it. And next time we do it, it'll be a lot smoother. So I just called two people that I knew how to do it up there. And I said, let's walk through it. Part of our job is to learn how to do this. So a little different. It wasn't really uncertainty about what we were facing, but it was an awkward situation where either that officer would have looked ridiculous, or as a leader, you can own the situation, diffuse it a little bit, reset everybody. And what that led to was people really paying attention to customs and courtesies, people wanting to be, I've never had a squadron ask for an inspection before. Sir, when are you ever going to inspect us? We want to show you how awesome we are. And I didn't expect that.
Yeah. And to answer your question, JR, about do I show our team my feelings of inadequacy or anxiety and everything like that? I agree with Chet that it has to be portrayed in the right way, but I am a big proponent of doing that because I believe in, and feel free to give me your thoughts on this, but I think in order to gain trust of your team, you have to be vulnerable with your team. And me just kind of sharing that allows me, you have to be vulnerable first. You have to tell them, like, listen, I've never done this before. I will try to do what's best, and I'll always ask you guys your thoughts here. But in the end, part of being a leader is you're going to, when the going gets tough, you're going to have to make that tough decision. But that vulnerability of just communicating that and just letting them know that, hey, I am not arrogant. I'm okay saying, I have no problem saying, I don't know. And I think that's a better answer than saying, well, this is how it's done, or I know how it's done.
Yeah.
Because if you have someone like that, you're not going to follow them. But if you have someone that says, I don't know, but let's work through it together. I'm not really sure. I don't know what's going to happen, but let's see where we go from here. And I think that vulnerability really helps build that trust with your team, because if you're vulnerable first, and I like to think people are good people. So people like helping out other people. So as your team can help you out, they'll be more open to being vulnerable with you and trusting you with what's truly going on with them, instead of just hiding it, saying whatever. Yeah.
I think that's a great point, that if you are human to them, then, and willing to admit a mistake and own it and admit what you don't know, then I think that comes to adaptability too. But to check what you said about, you got to start off, it doesn't matter where the bus is going, you got to get the people on the right bus. If you get the right people on the bus. If you have the right people on the bus, then you're adaptable to whatever comes, and your organization can flow. And if things aren't working, you can shift your efforts and how you approach certain problems there. So I think you certainly should not predict failure, right? You shouldn't be like, yeah, we're going to do this. It's going to be useless, and I don't know why we're doing it. People agreed with that. I'm like, yeah. It just utterly, it just gets under my skin granted, there's stuff that we're made to do that from oversight organizations or from our own leadership chain of command. Say, hey guys, we got to do this thing. And maybe from our perspective, it doesn't make a lot of sense, or it seems like a waste of our time and so forth. It's like, okay, why are we doing this? Again, if I come out and say, I don't know why the commander's making us do this, but we're going to do this. Okay, now I'm undermining the commander as well as whatever it is that we're doing. And so I don't think that's the way we should do it. And I think it's okay to acknowledge, hey, we're going to do this thing, and this may ultimately not be the right way to go. But I think based on what we know right now, this is the way for us to go. With that, it's okay to be a little human, to display humility, but also a little bit of self-effacing there. And this is why I feel like I maintain a social media presence, and not everybody that's in a leadership position does. And part of that is that I know I cannot reach everybody in my organization all the time. Like, I cannot develop that close personal relationship with them. But that helps to round me out as a person. And they see you as a whole human being. Yes, I'm this person, the leader, doctor, whatever professional title you want to put in that. But I am also a husband and a father and a nerd and love dogs and so forth. It completes you as a human being. Much more difficult to hate a whole person than it is to hate a role or a position that you're in that you then become conflated with.
Yeah, I agree with that. And if you even shrink it down, if some of our audience are emergency physicians or physicians in general, I kind of use this kind of same approach for when I'm working a shift, is I want my nurses and my ER techs to come to me and not be afraid to tell me things, because I can't keep an eye on the patients that I picked up because I'm running around like a chicken with its head cut off. And to do that is you have to kind of approach the job with the humility and the comedy and the lightheartedness, even though what we do can be pretty heavy, but to let them know that, hey, I'm not going to yell at you. I'm not going to bite your head off. Just come to me. And if you made a mistake, that's fine. We'll work through it together and everything. But yeah, it's that kind of the transparency that, I'm more than just a doctor. I'm more than just a comic book nerd. I'm all these things together.
Yeah, and there's operational knowledge we have to have, and then there's this kind of human knowledge or basic connection ability that we have to develop as well. So whether it's our EM team that we're working with, medics and nurses, it goes a long way to look people in the eye, to know them by name, to know a little bit about them. But a lot of leaders fail to understand the impact of making the time to know your people like this. When you do that, they feel pulled in a little bit more into that. They feel safer a little bit to exert themselves and take the risk, not necessarily a negative risk, but to go a little further, go above and beyond, because they know that whoever that leader is, they personally know who I am. What we see a lot of times now, and I think part of it is people are in a hurry, and part of it is actually the reason we're podcasting on this topic, is we expect certain leadership behaviors from our medical leadership teams, and yet nowhere in our educational pathway is there emphasis on leadership. And I would say there's a gradual movement toward this, but it is not one of the core competencies that the Accreditation Council for GME is teaching in American medicine. The Canadians have leadership as one of their core competencies. They have a little different approach to it. We want our doctors specifically to behave a certain way. And yet at no point was that an expectation followed with a preparation or a coaching or a mentoring. And again, coaching and mentoring, that's another part of this. When you're mentoring people, you're giving them the benefit of your experience. So if I had another great mentor in the military, you say mentoring is for the many. Everybody should have access to your experiences, and you should be gracious enough and approachable enough to share those. But grooming is not for everybody. You have to pick and choose which performer is going to fit well into which job and help them explore that path. And so if mentoring is giving them the benefit of your experience, grooming is more like giving them the benefit of their own new experience. And I was like, oh, that was really insightful. But you can't really do any of that if you don't start with, who am I? Why am I in this role? I didn't get this leadership job because I'm the best looking, the smartest, and the funniest. In fact,
It says you.
No, that's horrible. Thank you. We were specifically told that by our general on our first day. He goes, hey, love you guys. So glad you're our commanders. But let me tell you something. Your people are not laughing at your jokes because you're all of a sudden hilarious. It's because you're their boss's boss. So just remember, don't tell one joke too many. Don't hang around too long. You're not that charming. You're just the boss's boss. Say what you got to say and skedaddle so your people can relax and do their thing. Of course, there's a balance in there, but anyway.
Well, I had this thought. I didn't want to let it go because you talked about that difference of grooming and mentoring. And of course, grooming is a term that I know more in the negative context. And I think as you were talking about, I distill this down. When you're grooming somebody, you are bringing them to what you want them to be or do. And whereas when you're mentoring somebody, you're helping them meet their goals. As they seek mentorship, they see something in you that it aligns with where they want to be. And that's why I'm talking with you, versus grooming is bringing about something that is your own personal goal because you need that person to be this, do this, etc. And I agree, two completely different processes. And you look to different people for that a lot of the time. Now, not to say if you're that person that is being groomed for that next position of that next higher position of authority or that next role, that may be in line with your goals as well. And so there's that element of mentorship that goes out as well. But when I think of mentors, I think of finding mentors. I'm not asking them like, hey, make me into what you want me to be. I'm thinking, make me into what I want to be. And that's why I've selected you as a mentor.
Yeah. So mentoring, that's a great point too. It's maybe more global and grooming may be more organization or mission specific, where a leader who's doing both probably has to have the organization in mind as you're grooming people. What's my succession plan? Those are grooming functions there. And you're so right about that term because of so many of the other associations with that. I think we need a new word. Maybe just professional development. I don't know, but that's two words. But yeah. And the mentoring thing also, I think it's so interesting that we often look within our own community, right? So who are the leaders in my community? Maybe they will mentor me. And what we don't realize is sometimes you get tremendous guidance from people totally not in medicine or not in the leadership positions we're in. And yet their perspectives and their experiences are so relatable and useful for us.
I had a sit down with one of my bosses recently because I'm going up for promotion. And I said, put together my CV, sent it to him. And it is an extensive, like there's a committee, there's this whole process, there's a formalized CV and where you put in all your stuff. And he sat down with me and said, okay, tell me who you are. Give me the professionally, who are you? What is the expertise that you bring to this role, this setting of the role that you want? And so I told him, I'm a progressive thinker in EMS. I'm a change agent. And this is where I think we are. This is where I think it could be as a field and as a profession and as a specialty. And he said, that's all great. This CV does not say that. It doesn't convey that. And what he told me, and as I look at it more, he said, you've done a lot of things and you've done these many great things. So what's coming through in this CV is that you are a doer and not so much the thinker, that thought leader in this. Now, it would not be the first time that somebody says I was a doer and not a thinker. No, but it was such a great bit of information from somebody whom I greatly respect, to say, oh yeah. And it has nothing to do with what I've done. It's just, how do I word that in such a way that it shows where I'm going? And having that deliberate mentorship from him was really one of the more valuable meetings that I've had.
And I don't think they could have done that without being self-aware in their own right. They understood, one, their position in respect to where you were, but also they probably had some sense of mission and self in that role that they were bringing, and it came out this way in a useful way to you. And I don't think a non-self-aware leader could have done that.
Yeah, he was probably self-aware of the fact that he's like, I've been in your shoes before, hence the experience that we've been talking about. And, I wish someone gave me the same advice I'm giving you. And so this is what maybe, obviously I'm not him, but her, but the self-awareness be like, this is what you really want to say. I know this isn't what you want to show the committee, but I understand you. I know you, JR, for you, and this is how you should do it. And I think another valuable thing from that anecdote you provided is the honesty that your mentor gave you, right? Because that honesty, everybody says, honesty is the best policy. And I think that's great. I mean, that's why your mentor is a mentor, probably a leader, is because of the honesty. And I think it's strategic honesty in the fact that they knew that your CV needed work, but they weren't, I hate this term, brutally honest. Right? You could be honest without being brutal.
You don't need brutality with honesty, especially if somebody's seeking your advice.
Right. Exactly. And I liked her or his honesty with you and be like, have and let you kind of come around to it. He kind of guided you to there, as opposed to him saying, JR, this fucking sucks, man.
Right.
He's a piece of shit. I'm just throwing it out here.
I appreciate you telling me, because the shit just get here.
That would have been the Gordon Ramsay approach to mentoring, right?
No.
That's what that was.
What are you? I mean,
Onion sandwich. Yeah. And I think honesty is hard for any leader to do, and your mentor just hit it nail on the head there, right? Is in the moment, if you got to give one of your team members, feedback, but they're really excited they did a job, you're like, man, that was freaking terrible, but now's not the time for me to pop their bubble. Now's the time for saying, I'm very proud of you. You look like you were doing the moment and you did a great thing. Wait a couple of days and then come back with the honest feedback and everything. And again, your mentor hit the nail on the head. And as you guys, as the listeners can see, JR, the mentee, really took those words to home and, is really changing up his CV for the better.
But you'll see that actually, that JR or Phil or myself, we may never have gotten feedback like that, right? Because a lot of times the attention of the leaders is drawn toward the people who are failing or about to fail, or the ones who are not performing. So there's this kind of performance bias where if you're doing well enough, then your leadership may not even notice you. And the other side, when we are in leadership positions, we need to remember not to be threatened by the overperforming subordinates or teammates that we have. That's the other thing that happens. And that's where kind of self-awareness again comes back in. If I am threatened by every junior faculty, fellow, resident, medical student, paramedic, nurse that I work with, I am never going to be able to work with them, serve them as their leader, make the most of what they're bringing to the team. I can't do that if I'm always worried that somebody's going to show me up. That's also a certain degree of self-awareness. I'm constantly in awe of these medics that I work with, the questions they ask, the types of things they do under pressure. look around and go, man, I'm lucky I got into medicine when I did, because I don't think I'd be a competitive candidate today. So I'm grateful for that, but it also makes me try a little harder. I see where my limitations are. If I have a Phil or JR on my team, then I'm either going to have to hustle a little more or relate to the fact that I'm driving the left lane here. Maybe I should just move over to the right and let these dudes pass because they're coming up strong on this.
As we're talking about honesty and authenticity, I'm going to relate a story. This during our COVID days, and I was in public health too, as well as EMS. And we had a daily briefing with a lot of our leadership, the mayor, city council members, city manager, assistant city managers, hospital system CEOs, University of Texas, community college, a lot of very high-ranking stakeholder leaders in this. And every day we're updating them. This is what we're doing. This is what we're seeing. These are the concerns we have. This is what we're trying to figure out. And what we're doing. These are, because of course, elected leadership is catching flack for everything that we do wrong or every unmet need and so forth. Giving a good picture of things is very important. And one day I'd gotten some data from our team and looked at how we'd done. I don't even remember what it was exactly. And I talked about this in that meeting. And what became clear to me later, I want to say like the following day or two, was I was wrong. I had misinterpreted the data. And I had given this bad information to our leaders, which in fact, I think at least the mayor had repeated on TV. I've made this mistake. And this was at a time like the public is always looking to try to prove you wrong in some way. They're lying. I was going to catch you in a lie, and this is as you're doing it. And so the next meeting in front of that group, I had to tell the mayor I was wrong. And I gave you bad information, and this is how I interpret it, but this is why it was not correct. And the picture that I had given him the previous meeting was a lot sunnier than what the data was actually showing. It just wasn't showing it to be that sunny. And I was like, oh man, in front of all these people, I got to say, I screwed up. And here's where you are. And I really did not catch any grief over that. I was okay. And I think having that leeway to screw up is helpful from a leader. But also, if you are honest and not trying to sweep something under the rug, or you're not found to be disingenuous by them, then you're going to get a lot more leeway for that. And I think as leaders, as we display honesty about ourselves and candor about what we know, don't know, we get right or wrong, then the folks that work for us will feel that they have the safety to be wrong and therefore to take chances.
Now, I really like that story for a little bit different reason, but as you said, JR, you're a doer, but you're also a thought leader. But you're a doer. And I think when you have the integrity to do the right thing, that's what integrity is, doing the right thing, but also doing the right thing when no one's watching. But to do the right thing and say, I messed up or I made a mistake, if the team is the right team and the leader is the right leader that says, okay, we made a mistake. Now we know where to go from here. Let's move forward. What's our next steps kind of thing, right? Whereas opposed if you swept it underneath the rugs, we've seen this time and again, things just keep on getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And when it blows up, man, it blows up pretty big and you get that egg on your face. So I like that story for the fact that, your group, your team didn't make you feel bad about it. You already made yourself feel bad, but they had the audacity to say, okay, let's move forward. What can we do? Right. I think that's what makes a team function when things go wrong.
Yeah. I think that anecdote captures a lot of this self-awareness kind of topic that we're trying to address, right? There was a authenticity that you demonstrated and the mayor did too. The mayor was able to read the room with some emotional intelligence and go, yeah, this isn't, and also look at your history, see how you have aligned yourself with organizational values. So he knew that this was not a malicious or deliberate attempt on your part to seed disinformation. Probably also appreciate your intellectual honesty and go, I made a mistake. And then I had a boss who used to say, Good news is not like fine wine. It does not get better with age. I want to know right away. So I'm sure your mayor appreciated that too, because you did not sit on that as soon as you realized it. We would all have a natural tendency to go, oh man, I don't want to talk about this anymore. But it is absolutely the authentic thing to do, to own it and put it out there. There's a great role model for leadership that is very thankfully available to all of us. He's a retired senior enlisted advisor to the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff named Ramon Colon Lopez. So if you just look up CZ, he now works with the Robert Irvine Foundation to help first responders and military. But CZ, I knew him back when he was a pararescueman. But it's in his nature not to just be any old kind of PJ. And the reason I'm connecting him to this story of admitting a mistake is when he was a chief master sergeant, he used to always tell us, and guys, we cannot afford to have a one mistake organization. We can't. Because if people are afraid to make a mistake, they'll never do anything that is worth achieving. We as their leaders need to give them a little bit of room to swing. That's the only way you're going to get base hits and home runs. They got to have room to swing. This was a great story that you told because it was an opportunity for you to not only swing when you hit a foul ball, you didn't wait for somebody else to tell you that. You were able to just own it, which goes back to be real. And then from the mayor's side, read the room and kind of roll with it.
Yeah, another thing I want to mention on just the value or the characteristic of integrity is I said it's doing the right thing when no one's watching. And we like to dramatize that the right thing is always going to be like this really difficult thing. And man, your soul's going to be on, the chopping block and whatever. But I also want to let you know that integrity or doing the right thing when no one's watching is also the boring stuff, right? Showing up to work every day, making sure, your reports are all in order or, your to-do list is checked off. It's that everyday consistent process of doing the boring stuff of, which is integrity, which is doing the right thing. It's boring. It's not fun, but you'll get the payoff at the end. It's kind of like going to a gym every day or working out every day. You don't expect yourself to look like The Rock or Arnold Schwarzenegger or Mike Tyson when he fought Jake Paul. You don't expect yourself to look like that. But if you go every day or, consistently every week, you're going to see some changes and you're going to see it. So that's something I also want to bring to light of that value or that characteristics of integrity when it comes to leadership.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's got a couple minutes left here. Give me another character study, fictional or real.
I'll go last because I went first last time. So I'll go last.
Okay. Fair enough.
All right. A fictional leader, if I don't know if you are a fan, but you will be after I describe Optimus Prime, the leader of the Transformers. I did not appreciate this back in the 80s when I first watched a cartoon. I just thought it was cool. But when I had a chance to rewatch it with my kids, then I suddenly realized that this guy was somebody who was able to engage his team at their level and yet help to elevate them to the higher order, this is what we believe in and this is what we stand for kind of thing. He was able to represent that in his actions as well as in his words, which kind of goes along with our authentic discussion today. He demonstrated a unity in his thought, word, and action. He didn't set his followers up for a fall. He didn't blame shift. Not only that, he was powerful and exciting, right? For a fictional leader, I thought he was the whole package. I'll come back to nonfiction in a second if we're going to come back to that.
Let's roll.
Yes. Yeah.
Fiction. I'm going to pull a movie that I just saw recently called Fly Me to the Moon. It's a fun romantic comedy. You got Scarlett Johansson, Channing Tatum in it, and working on the Apollo 11 moon landing. And it's a fun romantic comedy, but there's some tension as they're building up, launching the rocket, and Channing Tatum is the flight director. And as they're getting ready to launch, there's certain things they know and certain things they don't know about what's going to happen. He's got everybody there at NASA and at Cape Canaveral. And he says the whole room, they're in final countdown. He says, I support every decision you make from here on out. And I think as a leader, that is such an important thing to make sure that your folks that you work with and work for you understand about you. And especially when it's a crisis situation, especially when you got lives on the line or the stakes are the highest, that's exactly when you need to trust your people the most and support them, even if with your perspective, even with the perspective of hindsight, you say, oh, maybe I would have done that a different way. Saying, I know I got the right people on the bus and I know you're going to make the best decision you can based on what we have.
All right. I'm going to swing to the realistic character because I couldn't think of any fantasy character. I remember 3 years ago, I was watching a post-game interview. Dan Campbell, the head coach of the Detroit Lions, he was standing on the podium. It was a devastating loss to a division rival, the Minnesota Vikings. They were in the lead and they lost it at like the last second, like heartbreaking, right? And you have to remember in context, the Detroit Lions 3 years ago are where my Chicago Bears are now. Pretty bad. Sorry. It's all right. It's all right. It hurts. It hurts, but it's all right. But the Lions, 3 years ago, they were pretty darn bad. And they've been bad for, it seems like, forever. And Dan Campbell's on the podium and he's talking and he just breaks down crying and saying, these guys are working their butts off day in, day out, and they get these kind of results. I feel for them. I feel so bad. And he's bawling his eyes out, that I think that's like, and I remember thinking to myself, watching him just be purely vulnerable, crying for his players and facing the media for his players. And I was like, wow, I'd follow that guy. I remember thinking like, man, this guy's a great leader. I was like, and I remember thinking to myself, like, this team's going to go far. This team is going to be good in the future. I can tell you that. Right. And my crystal ball was right. I'm not right all the time, but the Lions are now one of the most fair teams in the NFL. And Dan Campbell is still the coach 3 years later. Right. And I just remember watching that interview and just seeing his authenticity where his actions met his values. He was honest. He was vulnerable. I'm like, man, this is a guy that if he were my head coach, I'd walk to the ends of the earth with him because, man, this guy really cares for me. Yeah.
That's awesome. And it reminds me of another real world guy that was much like that. His name is David Brooks, and there's probably not much chance that anybody would have heard of him. He was a lieutenant colonel on my first deployment to Southwest Asia. I was a very junior flight surgeon on this team, and David Brooks was our commander, our deployed commander. So we land there in the middle of nowhere. We're living in tents, and the person I was replacing had not left yet. So I didn't have a place to stay for the night. And Colonel Brooks did 3 things within the matter of the next 30 minutes that have stayed with me for decades afterwards. It was really impressive. One, he didn't lose his cool. He just said, oh, okay, no problem, Doc, just stay with me until we sort all this out. I got a couple places to go. Just come with me and keep your bags in the Humvee with mine. So they were like, sir, we're going to take you to the commander's quarters now. He goes, hold on, I don't need to see the commander's quarters. They're not going anywhere. What I need to see is, where did all my air crew go? Like, where are they sleeping? And he looks over at me and goes, Doc, our air crew are the reason we can execute the mission, not the plane. The plane we'll get to, the people. So let's go see how they're sleeping. So we go and inspect their sleeping area, and he goes, yeah, this will do. And then he turns around. The guy's, you ready to go to your commander's quarters? He goes, nope. Need to find out how we're going to feed and water my people tonight. They're hungry. We've been on a plane for 8 hours. What's the plan? Sir, we already have your plan figured out. And he goes, I don't think you're hearing me. I need to know how my people are going to get fed and watered tonight. And then when he was done with that, he turned around and he goes, and what about this guy? And he made sure I was attended to and had a place to throw my bag that night. And then he was willing to go, and he was older than us. He must have been tired like the rest of us were. But that indelible, I've got your back. I'm providing the top cover. Now, when he told you to move your ass and had that stony look at his face, you were going to do it, but you were doing it out of love and admiration and not just out of fear, because this was a leader we were willing to follow.